So last week we started a marriage series called Love Worth Making. And this is going to take us all the way to December 18th, and then we'll have our Christmas Eve service. But like I said, we had our marriage seminar a few weeks back, and I promised you that I'd kind of create a series based on what Dr. Joe DeBruin said, which he said a lot, and it was really good content, and it was frankly content that I've never really read before in the marriage books that I've read, and it's just like, wow, that's fascinating. That's really, really worth breaking down. And so there'll be a lot of DeBruinisms for fun, things that we heard in the marriage seminar. But if you remember last week, we walked through Genesis 1, 2, and 3. And we saw kind of God's design, God's perfect purpose for marriage. And then we saw the obstacles, the ways that we must fight and learn and grow and strive together in order to get back to what God had designed. Remember we talked about how marriage is holy, W-H-O-L-L-Y, holy, H-O-L-Y. The husband and wife, the spouses were together and they were naked and they felt no shame, which meant like there was no distance. There was no, literally, there was no shame. There was no guilt. There was no sin. There were no secrets. They were whole and they were holy. But we talked about there are many obstacles, and if you've been married longer than 2 seconds, you know this. There are obstacles fighting against your marriage. And we talked about kind of the idea we ended with last week is that, how God speaks to Adam and he says, thorns and thistles your life shall by the sweat of your brow. So what we talked about is for both the husband and the wife that your marriage is an empty garden. And so for so long, we just let the weeds pile up and the trash overflow, and then we get frustrated, like, what's wrong with my marriage? Maybe I need to go find a new garden. Maybe I need to go find it. But we talked about that, no, the beautiful yet sometimes painful reality is that you got to fight and you got to work and you got to shovel sometimes, and hopefully, just this week alone, you planted something new in your marriage. That you decided, maybe you got a vision for what that garden might look like instead of just sitting there frustrated that it doesn't look like what you thought. It's those that go through the bad times and pursue through the painful times that really lead to the good times in marriage. We talked about that last week. I could tell you story after story, testimony after testimony. It's through those hard times that really something is produced, is created, is cultivated in your marriage. And so I hope that you've been thinking about this, and I want to talk about this a little more today, that your marriage is an empty garden, so go plant some beautiful rosebuds or whatever you're into, whatever metaphor works. We talked about build a big gazebo, build something, start somewhere and plant something new today. But today I want to break down something that Dr. DeBruin talked about that I've never heard before, and I've been fascinated about it ever since. And when he started it, I got a little like, careful, Bruin. Like, I was like, I don't know about this. And then when he expounded on it, I'm like, that is so true, and I've never thought about it this way before. If you guys were in the marriage seminar, how many of you guys remember when he talked about the unity candle? Anybody? Okay, good. So it was fascinating. What he talked about is he said, hey, there's this tradition that we do in marriage ceremonies, and he said, and I hate it. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. If someone who officiates marriage. And he said, what I don't like is the unity candle ceremony. And I went, careful, bro. We did a unity candle. I still have the unity candle to this day. Where is he going with this? It's blasphemy. No, what he said makes so much sense, but I've never heard it before. So if you're like me, pre-hearing Dr. DeBruin going, what's wrong with the unity candle, bro? Hear me out, okay? What he talked about, I think I have a slide here, Jace, that there's, in a wedding ceremony, when you do the unity candle, it's not mandatory. If you're like, we didn't do one, you're okay. You're still married, okay? But what he said is like, there will be a candle representing the groom and then a candle representing the bride. And then what happens is that those two candles create one bigger candle, and this is the part he hates. He said, and then they blow their candle out. And the groom's light ceases to exist, and the bride, I've messed my placing up. You know what I mean? They cease to exist, extinguish their flame because of that one candle. And what he said is what this inadvertently teaches husbands and wives, spouses, particularly I think Christian marriages, is that you as an individual cease to exist the moment that you get married. that your heart, that your mind, that your soul, that your walk with God is done now. And now everything goes towards that unity candle of marriage. Not with me. Is that making sense? So what he talked about is the next slide, is that really what we should do is have 3 candles. And it's you and you, boo, and I've said that too many times, I'm sorry. And the 2 of you, in your uniquenesses, in the way that God has made you, you are now building something that hopefully, if we talked about last week, will last a lifetime. Is this making sense? Let me say it to you in an absurd way that hopefully, if you're not on the same page with me, you'll be on the same page with me now. It's not as though when you get married, God says, oh, I don't love you anymore. I just love your marriage. Oh, no. I don't have plans for you. I only have plans for your marriage. No, there's no forgiveness and grace for you. It's only for your marriage. Obviously, that's nonsense. But I think oftentimes we misunderstand our personal calling with God and our personal responsibility to follow and trust Him. And what I break down today is oftentimes we get enmeshed or detached, spoiled my whole sermon for you, in a way that makes an idol out of the gift that God has given you in marriage. And what he said more than anything, Dr. DeBruin, in his 30 years of experience, he said, what gets couples messed up, when I talk to couples during couples therapy, he said, the number one thing, do you hear how valuable this is? I don't see anyone taking notes. The number one thing is that he said, and we'll break this down, don't worry, he said that the couples come in and they are, the word he used, the DeBruinism is, they are enmeshed. They come in and they say, we're not connected. They come in and they say, we're too far apart. There's something wrong. And he says the reality is not that they're distant, but they're actually too close together. That they are become so enmeshed that they have zero perspective. It's like literally like they're so close they're about to implode. And so what he says is what they actually need is not necessarily just more time together, but they need more time to work on themselves. They need more time to remember who God has made them individually to be. And when they can figure that out, oftentimes the marriage will get better and better. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. My sermon today, it's titled Treat Yoself, which is, a funny phrase that we often use to spoil yourself. Go have fun, just you. But actually what I mean is administer treatment to yourself. Self-triage. Because this is what I think if I can get every person who's married, and honestly, every person in the room, regardless of your marital status, to figure this out, I think we will get better and better and better every day. Because so often we are unhappy in our marriages, and so we only look at the other person. They are the problem. And the only solution is for them to figure their junk out. And so today what we're going to talk about is how you can treat yourself. And I hope you will believe this before we close today. My heart is that everyone would believe that marriage gets better when I get better. Marriage gets better when I get better. And shoot, let's change it. Parenting gets better. Amen? When you get better. Life gets better when you make the decision to trust God, to follow Him, to focus on yourself and what you can do. I hope you believe that, because it's so easy to just point the finger forever until you die. My marriage will get better if I choose today to decide, I'm going to get better. Marriage gets better when I get better. I think if both individuals in the couple, right, if the husband and the wife can both believe that, we're going to do a lot of good. Marriage gets better when I get better. So today let's talk about how, again, we can treat ourselves. I want to break down that idea that Dr. DeBruin talked about, this idea of enmeshment. This is rather fascinating, and I'll be honest, it was rather painful because I've realized that I'm definitely someone who has been guilty of enmeshment in my marriage. So DeBruin, again, from the Unity Candle, he talks about enmeshment, which essentially is living and saying to your spouse, I exist because you do. My soul and my heart and my everything, I exist only merely because you exist. And people that are enmeshed right now, you're probably thinking, that's biblical and accurate and right. What's your problem, bro? So stay with me here, because you're going to see how that is making marriage your idol, and that is always going to lead to disappointment. So a few signs, I have actually six signs of someone that is enmeshed in a relationship. Now, of course, today we're talking about spouses, we're talking about marital relationships, but I think a lot of this kind of codependency is something that you'll see in many relationships, not just in marriage, but particularly because the series is about marriage. Let's talk about a few signs of enmeshment. And I got to be honest, these 6 are very painful. They were painful to research, painful to put in my notes, painful to put on the slides, Jace, because they're accurate. So someone that is so codependent on their spouse, they've made their spouse their idol, they are enmeshed. These are 6 signs of that unhealthy state of enmeshment. The first one is this. You're feeling anxious, the feelings of being anxious or upset when you're apart from your spouse. Just pause for a moment. You can go, I've done that before, but right? If you are anxious or you are upset when you're apart from your spouse. Number 2 is the inability to engage in healthy disputes without feeling personally attacked. Now, I'm not talking about like, man, every time you yell at me, you get upset. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about healthy disputes, healthy arguments, just kind of that normal, natural conflict that exists in every relationship. Or rather, I think should be a part of every relationship. You cannot handle even just a minor dispute without feeling personally attacked. Number 3, gosh, this is a big one. You feel threatened by your spouse's dreams and their desires if they don't involve you. You feel personally, either you're asleep or I'm hitting home so hard you don't know what to do about it. You guys okay? It got so quiet in here, I'm starting to hear the rats in the attic. I'm just kidding. I'm just like, you feel threatened by your spouse's dreams and desires if they don't involve you. Next one, boundaries are regularly overstepped or ridiculed or just straight up shut down. I know they said they're busy, but I don't care. They're my wife, they're my husband, I'm going to call them anyway. I know they're in a meeting. I know they're out with their friends. I don't care. I know they're trying to sleep right now because they have a night shift. I don't care. Or, hey, I just need a night to myself. And you want me to just hold you all night, right? I don't know why I decided to embrace the table like that. I'm just trying to wake you guys up. Right, boundaries are, apologize. Regularly, your boundaries are overstepped, ridiculed, or shut down. Next one, we're actually going to talk about this more next week, about toxic calibration. But you have the inability to distinguish your own emotions and feelings from those of your spouse. You don't know which emotions, which feelings, or even which ideologies and beliefs. Because everything is so enmeshed, you don't really know where you begin or where you end. It's just like, well, the way they feel is the way I'm going to feel. And what they do is what I'm going to do. And then lastly, you assume they need the same things you need. Your same love language, your same schedule. You want everything to be absolutely the same. And you assume, like, well, this is how I'm wired, and this is how I receive love and care, so it has to be how they receive love and care. And if you're like, that's not true? No, bro, it's not true. If you are just unable, if all these things, maybe some of these things, this is an unhealthy way to live in your marriage. Because again, ultimately, what has happened is that your marriage and your spouse has become your idol. And let's talk about that, because I'm sure many of you are thinking, yeah, I just love them so much. Am I really the bad guy there? Hold on to that thought. Yeah, I'm obsessed with my spouse. What's wrong with that? You should talk to them. So let's read. I love this. Jonah 2:8 says this. Jonah 2:8 says, those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. Whole sermon should be devoted to do that. We should do Jonah again. I think we did Jonah maybe 5 or 6 years ago. We should do the book of Jonah again. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. So it's not just I love my spouse so much. No. That you have put them in a place in your heart, a place in your mind that is not only suffocating, but 2, it is making them your idol. And I promise you, maybe you're like, I just got butterflies, I love it right now. But when you have an enmeshment in your marriage, it will always lead to unmet expectations because you want them to be your Savior and God and do everything. But not only that, you will miss out on the joy of having everything properly aligned. That maybe you've forgotten your identity in Christ. And what God wants to do is to help you, and you can have this properly aligned that, hey, it's me and God, and from there, I'm going to relight my unity candle and then be able to reestablish and reinvest in the marriage that God has given me. Again, when you're enmeshed like this, when your identity is found in their emotions, when your identity is found in their schedule, when your identity is found with them not having any dreams or any other outside friends other than you, that's just, you're making your spouse your idol. And if you just realigned it, I think you'd be able to be like, oh, of course, that's how it's supposed to go. That's how it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to have my calling of God, and from there, we are creating something really beautiful together in our marriage. This is not, okay, you've been enmeshed, so now part and go your separate ways. This is, I need to make sure that I have a personal relationship with God, and He is working on me, and He is helping me, and from there, then from that well, if you will, that I've been digging, I can now pour into my spouse. I can pour into the life that God has given us together. So now the opposite side of this is kind of the opposite side of the coin, or often sometimes this is a response to being married to someone who is enmeshed like this. What I want to talk to you about is the error, the sin of being detached in your marriage, detachment, which is basically living and believing and saying to yourself, I'm only happy when I'm by myself. Ooh, the whole other side of the room is quiet now. I'm only happy when I'm by myself. That being with my spouse is an obligation. Being with my kids is an obligation. But I only really feel and fuel and feel alive when it's just me. And if you're like, amen, brother, again, that is so incredibly unhealthy. Let's break this down. 6 signs that you've grown detached in your marriage. Let's talk about 6 different things. And again, this is for marriage, but I think you'll see that oftentimes many people will live and act and behave this way in a myriad of relationships. So the first sign of detachment is this, that you're increasingly less interested in spending time with your spouse. You're not interested in spending time with them, not interested in having date nights with them, not interested in being intimate with them. You're just increasingly it's a chore in your mind to spend time with the gift that God gave you. The next one is this, that you're easily angered, easily annoyed by your spouse. There's a lot of things that I read, so I'll kind of add a little asterisk to this. There's also a kind of a state of detachment that I read a lot about this week that it's, you have no emotion. So you're not fighting anymore, not because you're being a peacemaker, but you have like a cold, dead heart, that you're just completely apathetic. So yes, you can be easily angered, you can be annoyed by your spouse, but then sometimes there gets a point where it's like, you just give nothing. I got nothing. You just stone face, stoic face, nothing. The next one is belittling or infantilizing your spouse. The way you talk to them, the way you treat them as though they're 3 years old. I don't know, some of you are like, well, they behave like a kid. Oh man, stay with me. That is not the way you should treat the gift that God has given you. You belittle them. You mock them. You malign them. You treat them like they're a little kid. Or even, let's take it a step further, you bash your spouse when you're with your friends. That's why you want to hang out with your friends, because you all want to gather together and talk about how much it sucks to be married. God help you. You just constantly bash and belittle your spouse. The next one is this. It's funny, I didn't realize how heavy this sermon was going to be, but I'm praying the Lord is doing a mighty work. You guys have never been more quiet, but you're not asleep, which is good. Next one is this. Seeking emotional support outside of your marriage. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying you cannot have any friends. You're not allowed to go to therapy. You're not allowed to say, hey, I just need to break this down. But what this is I don't go to her with my problems. I don't talk to him about my struggles. That's not what this relationship is about. I need to find someone else for that, because that is not what my marriage is designed to do. That's detached. I know, like, this is a series. We're talking about really complex things here, but I promise you, I see that so often that is not healthy to say, no, I don't bring my problems to my spouse. I don't get emotional support from my husband or from my wife. I go elsewhere for that. That is not healthy. The next is you're constantly preoccupied, constantly busy, constantly stressed. Just you're with them, but you're not really with them. You just look perturbed. You look frustrated. You're just, the spirit of, what's the Christmas movie? The spirit of Scrooge, just constantly on you. Like you're having a meeting in your head, Or let's take it to 2022. You just look like this, right? Constantly scrolling, talking at date night. If you have your phone out like this during date night, shame on you. I hope the Lord just slaps it out of your hand, snaps it in half. Yeah, that's just constantly preoccupied, constantly busy, constantly stressed. And then lastly, you evade responsibility. Maybe there's feelings of like, you can shut up and do my best. What are you talking about? I'm the problem? No, I'm not the problem. You're the problem. What do you even, no, okay, like, I guess to kind of break this down, they talked about like you can't hold commitments, or basically you're a liar because you say you'll do something, but you don't do it. That your words and your actions are two very different things, and then when approached, you're like, what are you talking about? You evade responsibility. Again, all of these are symptoms of living detached. So let's talk about this, because I think even there's been times in my own life where I've lived detached. I've definitely been enmeshed with my marriage, and I've definitely been detached from my marriage. I've felt this. I've got both sides here. All of this is just hitting so home about like, man, of course there's got to be a healthier way. So when you're living detached, and you're living rather specifically in your marriage, living detached, you really believe that freedom is your idol, is your purpose. Is all you're really looking for in life is freedom. And again, of course, I'm going to say, we can even go back to Jonah 2:8. When you turn to vain idols, you rob yourself of the steadfast love of God. And I've also seen a lot in my short time on this earth. So there's a lot of people that get married young, and then they get jealous about their friends that are not married. And so they're married, but they feel like they missed out on their wild party days. And so they'll grow detached. And they want to, it's almost like this quarter-life crisis of, I missed out on the parties. I missed out on living wild. I missed out on, sleeping around. And so you're either doing that or you long to be able to. And you live emotionally detached. And I know sometimes, I know things are complex, because I know especially if there's someone that's really enmeshed, it will often make the other person detached. You're just trying to come up for air. But I'd rather say this too hard than not hard enough. If you really are living detached in the marriage that God has given you, giving no emotional support, or rather just living as roommates with no interest in pursuing that romance again, it's honestly, it is selfish, it is stupid, it is prideful, it is idiotic, and all but I need my me time. I think you need to be reminded that you gave all of that up when you said I do. All of but what about me? You have, with enmeshment, you've put your spouse on a pedestal that only God is supposed to be. And I have this image of like when you're detached, you're just like, your spouse is out in the cold and you don't care. Just like, I'm fine with myself, by myself. And frankly, you rob yourself of the treasure of your spouse. Remember going back to that empty garden analogy? Yeah. Some of you guys, relationally, you put the tools away 2 decades ago. No thanks. You're done gardening, and you wonder why you're suffering. You wonder why your marriage is struggling. Oh man, hear me. Your marriage is struggling for many of you because you're struggling. Your marriage is unhappy right now because you're unhappy. And you're blaming the other person instead of looking to God saying, man, if I get better, if you would help me, God. When you live detached, again, you rob yourself of the beautiful treasure that is investing in your marriage every single day. Let me read to you Proverbs 18:22. I'm going to show you two different translations. This is the NLT, and this is what Eugene Peterson wrote in the Message, because I kind of like both. So Proverbs 18:22 says, "The man who finds a wife finds a treasure, and he receives favor from the Lord." And I love how the Message kind of gives it for both husbands and wives. It says, "Find a good spouse, you find a good life. And even more, you find the favor of God." So let me talk to you about a couple practical things. I know this has clearly been a very odd sermon, but next week we're going to talk about fighting, so get ready for that. Bring the gloves. No, just kidding. Bring the Bibles. So if this heart is that we are reminding ourselves and recommitting again, you know what, marriage, it really is a love worth making. But we're reminding ourselves that it does take time, that it does take investment. So let's talk about three things that is really key for you to establish or reestablish in your marriage. And I would say ideally, of course, this could be a really good conversation for both of you to have. Maybe just because, I don't know, the Holy Spirit knows, maybe this is something you need to pray about and then present or talk about with your spouse. Ideally, it'd be like, let's stay up late, order a pizza, and talk about these three things. Or whatever you're going to do. Go to the candy store, or maybe you're health nuts. Let's eat some kale and talk. Whatever you're going to do, like spend time together this week thinking about these three things. Or you can do all three, pizza, kale, and candy. Praise the Lord. So how do we get better at this? How do we, again, if marriage is an empty garden, how do we plant something beautiful that will, again, we all hope, that will begin to thrive, that will last us this lifetime? I think three kind of disciplines that you have to establish. So the first thing, of course, we've talked about this whole morning so far. One, you must rediscover and celebrate your unique identities. That you must rediscover and celebrate your unique identities. We talked about this last week, and I'll be honest, talk about it next week. That you and your spouse, you're different. And I know you sometimes think it would be better if they were more like you, but praise God that they're not, honestly. And we laughed. Hopefully you laughed, or you all laughed at me. I said, I don't want to be married to me. I really don't. I would hate to be married to me. I want to be married to Kristen. And oftentimes, our differences feels like something that needs to be ironed out. No, it's not. Remember, we talked about this. You're in the change management business, right? I'm sorry. The difference management business, not the difference changing business. Let me repeat myself. With the differences, the idiosyncrasies, the different personalities that are a part of your marriage, you're there to manage those differences. If not, what I'm telling you, celebrate and honor those differences, not just try and figure out how to change the other person. God made them uniquely. He didn't replicate, he didn't clone you and give you, praise his name. He gave you them. So you got to rediscover and celebrate your unique identities. 1 John 3:1. I love this. It says, "See what great love the Father has lavished on," I'll change it, "lavished on you, that you might see the great love that our God has lavished on you, and that you might be reminded and you might celebrate in one another and honor in one another that you are each children of God." Maybe there's a lesson to be learned. Husbands, that's God's daughter. That's God's son. A story for another day. Story for another day. I'll save it. Put it in my pocket for later in this series. Talking to Tom Cedarbaum about asking for his daughter's hand in marriage and how terrified I was. They are married to a child of God. Celebrate that. Respect that. Honor that. And for many of us, we need to rediscover what it means to be a child of God, how he has wired you uniquely. And from there, that might be a blessing to your marriage. Number 2 is this: establish and honor as well healthy boundaries. You have to establish and honor healthy boundaries. I got permission for this, but a quick personal story with my wife, Kristen, and me. Like I said, I definitely have been enmeshed. I definitely have been detached. I feel like, because she's so great, I definitely more and more towards enmeshment. I can suffocate. I can suffocate my girl. I'm so unwilling to admit it, I won't even say the words right. Yeah, I just know. And so this was 2 years ago, basically. But, our kids are at an age, and what she felt was, hey, I really want to get a job. And spoiler alert, she's had a job for almost 2 years. She worked at Give Fitness. Give Fitness gave her an amazing, we love Miss Give Fitness. She's at Valley Fitness now. She's worked at a gym for almost 2 years now. But she was like, hey, I really want to get a job. I think that'd be really fun, and I'm really kind of feeling like, it'd be great to do something part-time and have a job. And so let me just, open my chest up, and let me explain to you how unhealthy I handled that at first. And she said, I want to get a job. And what I took it as, initially, as a belittling of my value. She needs to get a job. What I heard was, I need to find a second job. That's not what she was saying. I heard it as like, oh, so I'm not enough for you. You need to go somewhere else. Enmeshment. That's not healthy. Like, oh, really? So you want another job? Aren't I enough? Aren't these kids enough? That's not what's going on. I heard I have a problem that I need to fix in her. I'm not doing enough. And what she was reminding me is, one, you think you're the only person that provides for this family? And two, she wanted an adventure. She wanted space. Shoot, very practically. She wanted a place to call her own, because I get to do that every day. I have a job. I got a place. I got a staff. I got an office. We go to lunch sometimes. We have caffeine parties often on Fridays or Mondays or Tuesdays. We do. Pastor Kirkley sometimes doesn't participate because he's trying to wean himself off caffeine, but pray for his soul. But we have fun. And she was saying, hey, I want to be able to do that too. And I was so enmeshed that I initially belittled that. And it was really unhealthy. Now, I want to be clear. It wasn't like 6 months of that. It was like 2 conversations. And she's just good enough to be like, I love you. Shut up, you're wrong. I'm like, yes, Lord, / yes, Kristen. So it was really, 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 I'll talk about this in the next one, but it was really, really important for her to have that. And honestly, I don't think she realized how important it was until she had it. That she realized, man, I like, it's almost, and she might hate that I use these terms, but it's like she almost has her second church. She's called it that. Like Valley Fitness, that's my second church. She's got a place where she can invest in people and love on them, and she has friends. Like, oftentimes when she comes here, it's like, oh, you're Pastor Garrett's wife. But it's great because when I go to Valley Fitness, it's like, oh, you're Kristen's husband. And you know what I mean? Like, and she's like, yeah, that's right. She loves that. It opened our eyes. What I mean to say is this. It opened our eyes to how lopsided Kristen was living and how healthy it was for her to have healthy boundaries. Because before that, it was just me and the kids and the church, and that's it. And there was all these pressures. And I remember, like, even when she started, she was like, oh, I don't know. Like, should I quit this job? I'm like, no, you love it. It was so, like, she had, like, shame. And, like, no, like, it was, you have been living so lopsided, you need to be able to go and do something. And it really took, me realizing how enmeshed I was, that now I get to celebrate what she's doing. I kind of love it now. I walk into the gym like, that's right, I'm Coco's dude. I love it. It's so great. She has friends that know her, and it's just cool. So the next one is, the last one is this, and I'll kind of talk about kind of practically what it's meant for us. Silly way to think about it, but I think it's a fun way to think about it. Of course, you want to celebrate your uniquenesses. You want to establish and honor healthy boundaries. And the third one is just, you got to practice the dance. Chris and I, we took a dancing class once. I'm sure you've seen just by how I you remember how I tried to hug the table? I'm not very good. I'm a very awkward, lanky dude. Like, just my arms, I'm like Slender Man. Like, and so we took a dancing class, and I'm not I yelled at the dancing instructor because I didn't know what to do, and he said to put your hands like this, like you need to be the cup, and her hands will be the straw. And we were like dancing like that, and I'm like, what? I yelled at the dancing instructor in like the Harbor Heights area. And anyways, never taken a dancing class. I don't know why I shared that. It's just a silly story. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. What I mean is, picture a dance. Like maybe Maybe in your mind it's a salsa dance, you know? I mean, don't do no line dancing with your spouse. I mean, make it steamy. And you know, in a good dance, there's times where you're really close, and then there's times where you drift apart so she can spin and you can do whatever move you didn't learn in the dancing class, and then you come back together. Does that make sense? Then you drift apart, and it's not because you're getting further apart in your relationship, it's because there's moments for her to be in the spotlight. There's moments for him to do his little thing that I don't know, you know? Practice the dance of making sure you're not detached, you're not enmeshed, but you're celebrating one another. So a few things practically for me, and hopefully you begin to invest again in your marriage. So before these key, and don't hear, my wife and I have it all figured out after 12 years. Certainly don't hear that. I think she left because the kid was upset, but if you told her that, she would laugh in your face and then give you a card to go to Valley Fitness because she gets commission. You know, so practice the dance. So before, just a couple years ago, before these boundaries were set up, there were no times in our lives, in our marriage, when it was just me and the kids. Countless times. Millions of times. It had just been Kristen and the kids. There had never been a moment it was just me and the kiddos. And I'll be honest, maybe too, there was a bit of like, I don't know if I can do this. Or sometimes, you know, you make jokes like, yeah, I'll babysit the kids. My wife would be like, shut up, you're a parent. You're not babysitting your kids. That didn't really happen, but I saw it in her eyes, you know? So before those boundaries, there were no times when it was just me and the kids, and it's so great that I have that now. It's so great that I have that now. And of course, make no mistake, they miss their mom every stinking moment. They don't like it yet. But it's so fun that it's just, I get little adventures with my kiddos. Also, before some healthy boundaries were set up, I didn't feel like I had the right to take time just for me. Like, because I'm already gone at work. So then when I come home, obviously, and maybe this is like a step 2, step 3 in your marriage, but I always would feel shame if I was taking time just for me. It's like, I need to go to the gym. I need to go for a walk. I need to get my head on straight. So I need to take some time. Or even, obviously, sometimes like, I need to go hide in a coffee shop and iron out everything for next Sunday's message, because this Sunday's message was way too depressing. They were so sad and quiet the whole time. You know, but I felt so much shame and guilt. So sorry, I know I'm going a little long, but maybe this is just dysfunction that you've done too. I would feel so much guilt and shame, but I wouldn't ask, so my wife wouldn't know, and then I would be frustrated that I'm not getting time for myself. Anybody ever done that? So she can't read my flippin' mind. She just knows I'm grumpy about something. Who knows? The list is long in my silly brain. And if I had to learn, like, is it okay if I take 30 minutes to just go to the gym? To this day, yet, only been married 12 years, she hasn't been like, are you serious? No, she'd be like, of course. There's childcare. Take the kids with you, you know? Yeah. Take as long as you want, you know? Like, hey, she's been really, really first laugh of the sermon. Yeah. Yeah, before boundaries, I didn't feel like I had the right to take time, just me and the Lord. Or just me to just figure out what's going on with me. And again, I would get frustrated, but I wouldn't communicate it. So practice the dance. I want you to stand to your feet. We are going to close out with a song. And I just want to end you with this idea as we close. Matter of fact, I'm going to move over and get my guitar set up. Yeah, hey, there we are. So the last idea I want to leave you with is this. Hopefully this can be something you talk about. But it is very simple. Just this idea of the unity candle. The idea of sometimes you feel like the person, the soul that God has made in you has been extinguished. It would be enmeshment. Or detachment would be, you kind of want that other candle to be gone because it's easier that way. And so I think, a love worth making here is just declaring and believing and living out, very simple, I respect you. I respect me. I respect us. Or you can even change, I love you. And if you're not comfortable, if you're wired like me, I'm not comfortable saying I love me. I know I should be because God I love you, God loves me. I love us. I love us. You're not going to be detached anymore where you cease to exist, because that's always going to lead to unmet expectations and disappointments. You're not going you're going to live detached, where you don't give any care or respect or love to them. But the two of you are going to treat yourselves and spend time saying, I got to figure out me a little bit. And can we figure out some boundaries to kind of help one another? That would be really cool this week if you start talking about, hey, how can I help you here? Maybe you laugh like, yeah, that was a depressing sermon. Ha 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 ha. So do you feel detached or enmeshed? Maybe you can go there. How can we celebrate one another? We'll talk about that next week. How we can honor, serve one another. But I pray that as we close, sorry, I got to put these on. There's no graceful way to put these on because I want to be able to hear your beautiful voice, Christina. And I guess the bass and drums on my guitar. We're going to sing this song that reminds us not only the foundation for our marriage, but the foundation for our life. Because it's not just you, and it's not just the other person, but we put our hope and our faith and our trust and our lives and our doubts and our trauma and our shame and our feelings of, man, I failed. We put it at the feet of Jesus. Because he is our Savior, he is our God, he is our King, he is our chief cornerstone. Let's sing together.